This is going to be a
All
fun
right,
show.
Turn your fan back.
Holy God! Come on.
Welcome to
this
the
podcast with many more kids than normal.
Welcome to the TForce LCS rundown. My name is Motkanorum. Welcome to a Super Week recap. I feel like we should have some like horns that go off when I say Super Week.
I want one of those horns you hear in
Taboo
bad
zone.
rap songs. So like, brr, brr, brr.
Yes, that's exactly what I had in
No,
mind.
Scott,
weed every
that-
day.
That was every single time they said Brazil while in Brazil for the World Cup. It was like,
We have
wow,
to have
wow,
the
wow, wow,
Vuvuzela.
wow.
That's exactly
No,
right.
they didn't have the vuvuzelas this time, but they had annoying ass horns that were
I
hand
see it
powered.
more as the air raid siren from Silent Hill. That's,
you go.
That's more right.
I appreciate
All
that.
of the above.
Well, I am joined this week by people, and these people have names. And some of their names are
Or hard to
Greg,
pronounce.
Credible Mushroom, Russo,
Oh my God.
Mitch, Serial Baux Turner,
I'm
back
back.
from the dead. And by dead,
Not
I
really-
mean Brazil.
Yeah, I wasn't really
It's like
dead,
dying.
but on a flight I was pretty dead. And the last whole week I was pretty dead.
Montezuma's Revenge.
And returning, Dan Osifa.
Well, you can
Joining
take
us
it.
from
I'll
the
take it.
West
you can
Coast.
pronounce,
And it got cut
pronounce
off.
Cepha or Sifa or whatever the fuck that is. You
Cepha.
can't pronounce Russo.
Sefa. Sifa.
Everyone changes my name whenever they say it,
Dragos.
so.
I think I've gone with Sifa. Honestly, it's been up in the air for forever. I got it from a book a long time ago, so there was never an official pronunciation to guide me. So at this point,
What
it's
book
just
was it?
been
So, like the T-Force proper, it's whatever I make it.
at that particular cast. Yeah, it's ever changing. It was the it was a Warhammer 40K book. It was the one about the Iron Snakes. Someone in the chat might know
Okay.
about it, maybe.
I can
They
appreciate
don't know
Marine.
how to pronounce it for some reason because that wouldn't be obscure.
It's
Well, there we
Hebrew for adder. I googled it after I took it, and I was like, "Oh, this is
Thanks.
weird," but
It's
you
the
know, whatever.
worst. Well, you should be playing Cassiopeia then. Speaking of Cassiopeia, we can now have you as mid, and speaking of mid, we can now have a full team in League of Legends. And do you know why we can have a full team? It's because Dan will be joining us as the 5th person on our show. Optimus Tom is out for this week. We decided there has to be a particular Tom balance per show. 1 a week is going to be enough. Next week, we're going to try for 2, see how that feels. But we are now a 5-person show. Dan's going to stay with us and hang out, which is cool. He's done great so far. Actually, Greg's gone now. Greg just walked out. So
So we're down to 4.
we're
4
back
again.
down to 4.
He's taking care of the kids next door.
Greg's suffering because the fan in his room, which keeps him cool, he had to turn off because it was producing too much background noise. And then he tried to open his window to stay comfortable, and then
But
little
now there's
kids started
kids.
shouting. So now he just has to suffer in the heat like the rest of us.
And that lovely description out there for you people in podcast land would have been paired up lovely with video if you were to join us live Sunday nights at 9 p.m., shortly after 9 p.m., on Twitch TV /TForce Podcast, or just go to lcs.trinityforcepodcast.com and follow the things there. You can also find us on iTunes and Stitcher, where we love reviews. And of course, do not forget to check out our other shows, the Trinity Force Podcast, airing Mondays and Wednesdays, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern if you're normal, and then the Oz LOL Podcast on Thursdays.
Seriously, fuck those kids.
Right. So we had Super Week this week. And before we hop into this is going to be a madness episode. Here's how we're going to attack our Super Week this week. We're basically going to go down Europe and North America, hitting all of the teams. We're just going to talk about what happened that week for them, what the big surprises were, what we can look forward to in weeks to come. It's going to serve as a hit for all the games in Super Week, because there's way too many to get too in-depth into any of them. We'd be remiss missing some. But we'll also take a look at the standings and how everybody ranks today and what we can expect for the rest of the split going into Worlds. But before we do that, we are going to take a moment to give some appreciation to a sponsor for the podcast. So for those of you who have been listening to the Trinity Force podcast or listened to our show last week or even the week before, if you watch the show live, you will know that we are sponsored now by Gather's Granola. A fan of our show, actually, owns the company or works for the company, and he got in touch with us, wanted to set something up. It is an amazing product, and I don't say that because it's just something that was sent over to me, and they're sponsoring us. They actually did send us all granola, and it is fucking fantastic.
I can vouch for that right now, considering I'm eating Fox's Fancy, and it is pretty damn good. It goes well with the gin and tonic, guys.
It's wicked good. I just eat it with a little bit of milk. It's awesome. So they set out with a goal. They wanted to make the best granola available. They used the best ingredients they could find. It was all family recipes, and they have a ton of pride in their quality. So we're going to keep this relatively short since we've already hit it once on the show. You can head over to bit.ly/TForce granola, and you can use the offer code TForceGG, that's all caps, for a 10% off your order. Now, it's $5.25 a bag with $5.50 shipping if you purchase it off Amazon. It's also available at some Whole Foods and Fresh Markets if they're in your area and in the Northeast. But this is awesome granola, really great flavors, and at a really great cost. So awesome ingredients. I wasn't into the whole order online thing, but I actually ordered some of this, and I have it every morning for breakfast.
Or you can just join a podcast that gets sponsored, and that can work out pretty well for you too.
I think it was only the one time.
Yeah, I think that's probably it, unfortunately. But I just got mine because I just got back, and there's a lot of it.
Yes, there's quite a bit, which is fantastic. But you don't have to order too much to have a lot. It's really great proportions, really good food, and everything like that. So moving on, we are going to hop straight into the EU LCS. So for those of you who are maybe relatively new to League of Legends, or in the LCS in general, Super Weeks are weeks where basically crazy amounts of games happen. Each team normally plays about 2 games a week. Super Weeks, they play 4. Action-packed, 6 days of League, which is fantastic. And by the end, the teams get awful burnt out, I'm sure. So let's hop right into the European LCS. So how we're going to do this, just as a recap, we're going to start at the top of the bracket in EU, work our way down, and just talk about each team and their wins and losses. We'll hit them really quick. If there's anything big to talk about, we'll sit there and talk about it. But other than that, let's hop right in because we do have quite a bit to cover. So first place currently in Europe, Alliance, sitting on top with a commanding 14-4. Managed to pull off wins this week against the Super Hot Crew and SK Gaming, but loses to Copenhagen Wolves.
Blah.
And Fnatic, who hit it hard this week.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah.
We'll
I mean,
get to them
just to note that there's 3 games clear right now. Like, even despite going 2-2 for the week, there's still 3 games clear of first place.
Right, and we do have a couple of normal weeks going forward, normal being that they're just regular 2-game matches. So unless this loss this week, these 2 losses, put them into some big mental fog that sends them spiraling towards the ground into oblivion, I don't really see them losing too much in terms of rank and position at this time. But a loss to the Copenhagen Wolves. I didn't get to watch that game, but what the hell happened?
Sloppy play. I
don't think anyone saw it coming, but I mean, it looks like they just kind of slept on him, I guess, which, don't necessarily blame them, but...
Was it their last game? Doesn't look like it.
No, their last game was versus Fnatic on day 3, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Which was an excellent game, which was awesome. And totally probably my favorite game to watch in EU of the week. But yeah, their loss versus Copenhagen Wolves was like really just felt like sloppy play, and like they had just slept on them and not really appreciated the team as a whole, and just thought that they couldn't win. And don't get me wrong, I don't think the Copenhagen Wolves they're probably the worst team in the EU LCS. They are. I mean, I think they are by a reasonable margin too, but they're still a professional team, and if you give them a substantial lead, they're still going to end the game. They may not know how to win when they're ahead, but if you throw the game, they're not going to just ignore it and give you 60 seconds to respawn. So
yeah. When something like this happens, do you think it's Alliance just not respecting Copenhagen Wolves and basically letting them walk all over them after a couple of big advantages are gained? Or do you think it's the Copenhagen Wolves really getting their shit together, putting their head in the game, and actually being able to pull off a win against the number one team, considering they're currently sitting
I think it's the first. I think it's Super Week. I think Alliance was preparing for most of the teams that they felt would be difficult. And, when you're playing double the matches you're used to, something has to give somewhere, especially when you put in the level of prep that Alliance does for their games. And I think they just figured, Copenhagen Wolves last place team, we just don't need it. We'll be fine. And then it took them completely off guard, and they just weren't able to recover.
Well, I think there's another part of that. They were riding pretty high going into that third game, because I think Super Hot Crew was still one of the better teams, right? They'd been doing pretty well. They're in fourth right now.
Yeah, they played really well this week.
They beat out SK as Super Hot Crew first, then SK in a stomp. It was like a 12-0 game that ended with a 20-minute surrender with SK just saying, "Yeah, we're done. We don't even care. This one's not even a contest." So Alliance, coming off a match like that, had to have their heads just inflated so heavily. And I mean, they've done. I don't want to take away from them, thinking that they might their egos get boosted too much. But I mean, they lose to the last place team right afterwards. That's pretty brutal drop afterwards.
I wonder if they had the same feelings about Fnatic, because Fnatic has been just so inconsistent this split, yet they walk in, we'll hit them because they're currently in third, but they walk in and they win all of their games. So I think at that point in the game, when you've won two pretty good sizable victories, lose to a really bad one, it threw them off for Fnatic and allowed Fnatic to just walk over them.
I think when you're that far up and when you're playing that well, slight losses tilt you really easily or make you lose focus on the game really easily. Like when you're playing that well and you F up early game or you F up a simple rotation, it's not going to go well for you once after that point, because you've been playing so perfectly. You're shaken by that single mistake. Whereas if you're even or you're falling behind, you're like, okay, it's just a mistake. We can recover. But when you're that far ahead and you've been playing that well earlier in the week, it's really daunting. You said it's like the first time you've experienced doubt in the entirety of this Super Week is dying the first time to one of these teams, especially a team like Copenhagen Wolves. I feel like as a mental game, it would be really easy to lose your cool.
Yeah. Well, it'll be interesting to see how they perform next week. They have Millennium day one as the last game of the day, and then they have Rocket. So a team that isn't doing two teams that are kind of middle of the ground right now. I think you would probably prepare a little bit more for Rocket over Millennium, just because Millennium has huge consistency issues. But maybe after suffering those two losses, they're gonna snap up and walk through next week. I at least hope so, for the sake of their positioning, just because that could be the difference coming down the line here. I mean, this is really what it's getting down to is those 2 or 3 games. If Fnatic somehow pulls up ahead and takes the EU championship again, that'd be awesome to see. But moving on to SK Gaming, they had 2 wins, 2 losses as well. A win over Gambit, which if you didn't win versus Gambit, well... a loss.
You weren't. Then you didn't play him this week.
Correct. Embarrassing loss against Alliance, loss against Super Hot Crew, and then win versus Copenhagen Wolves. I'm kind of nervous about SK Gaming. It seems like something's switched up with them, and they've been losing games they should be at least contending for. I mean, they had that really bad loss against Alliance. And they only managed to pull wins off Gambit, who everybody beat this week and is doing terrible anyway, and Copenhagen Wolves.
So are they the TSM
consistently
of
doing
EU?
terrible?
Are they the TSM of EU? They beat the really bad teams and then lose to the ones that are ranked top 4?
In that sense,
week,
yes.
This week they were.
I'd say in that
I know.
sense,
I
yes.
only meant in that. In that
Okay.
regard.
They've always had weak early game, and the thing that I'll always push is that if a team can exploit that weak early game and get an advantage, and they don't throw that advantage by forcing a bad fight or by getting too greedy, it's really easy to snowball a game out of SK's control and win the game. And I think that's what you see the better teams like Super Hot Crew and Alliance do. I mean, Alliance, that wasn't even a game. That's like watching a Gambit game this week. Just don't even watch it. If you're an Alliance fanboy, watch that game, because it's just
it'll make you feel good.
Yeah, make you feel great. Yeah, give you the warm and fuzzies. But I mean, otherwise, there's no reason to watch that game. It's just crushing. If you're an SK fan, it's crushing, and if you're anyone else, there's no reason to care. It's not even a game of League of Legends.
Well, they currently sit at 11-7. They're technically tied for second place. I don't know how they pair up with Fnatic and versus in terms of wins versus losses, but 11-7.
They're tied.
They've obviously got 2 weeks if everything stays the same that they need to pull off wins in order to get ahead. They're up against Rockcat and Fnatic next week. So I think it's going to be a pretty difficult week for them. I think Fnatic's going to be their big challenge. If they can pull off a win, then in my mind, they're still in contention for the top 2 spots. But if they can't pull off a win there, you're really running out of time and you're not displaying the skill sets needed to be one of those top 2 teams. Obviously, SK is still SK. They're not in a position to be relegated, but maybe the next split we might see some roster changes just to fix some of the problems that they're having, if the problems are anything less or more rather than just mental right now.
I just don't think. I think that they're going to lose to Fnatic. I'm almost 100% sure that they will. If they play like they played this week, at least, then I think that this is the week they drop out of. I would say they risk going down to 4th if Super Hot Crew plays well, but I think that they'll most likely either remain, if they're lucky, remain tied for 2nd. But if they lose to Fnatic and to Rockcat, they're definitely going to drop to at least 3rd.
Mm-hmm. Well, moving on to that in perfect position. Moving on to Fnatic. Fnatic had a very hot week this week. They won. I think they're the only team out of both NA and EU. I'm going to verify that. Yep, they were the only team to win all of their games, and not too bad either. Wins against Rockcat, Millennium, Gambit, and Alliance. Obviously, the win against Alliance, Rockcat, and Millennium are up there in terms of importance, but just overall, being able to beat out Gambit isn't that impressive, unfortunately for them. In terms of the standings, let me see what that actually did for them. Where were they last?
They jumped them from 4th to 2nd.
Yeah, so that's tied for 2nd.
Well, they had looking at the timeline, they had gone 500 every single week up until now. Mm-hmm. They had matched their wins and losses the entire way, and then suddenly a 4-0 week puts them in 2nd place, which isn't really surprising, but that it would jump them that much considering the top of the standings are pretty close. I guess it's there's the top and there's the bottom, and then the middle is just a cluster right now.
They're North America spring split, basically.
Yeah. And they just traded places with NA, which is also a cluster.
Right. I'm wondering if this is the point in the split where Fnatic remembers, wait a second, we never lose this whole split thing. Now
well, if you were here, if you were here last week, Watt,
you
would have known that Fnatic was our team to watch because they had this potential to either just completely gutter themselves or launch themselves into contention again. And
here we are.
They and Cloud9 were both in a similar situation. I think they rose. Cloud9...
They went 2-2, I think.
We'll get there.
Could have been better.
That's
but
right.
Yeah, Fnatic took it by the reins. I think they're up at 2nd place. I think it'll probably stay at 2nd place. Maybe drop to 3rd briefly, but I think they're probably going to finish 2nd.
Yeah, Optimus Tom was really big on how Fnatic plays really well.
Ooh, I think we're losing you, Dan.
Okay, that's not just me. Yeah, it looks like he's dead.
Yep.
Sorry, guys, we lost
Dan
our 4th
died.
member.
So now we're down to 4. LF 1 more.
Goddamn DCs.
And there he goes. And the video's all screwed up, so don't pay attention to that. Although you do get to see a very clean-shaven Dan if you're watching live on Twitch shortly after 9 p.m. on Sunday. Everything's a plug.
Every time I solo queue, it turns into a 4v5. Jesus Christ.
There you go. Yeah, that was nice.
Yeah.
Like that.
So I mean, we can go ahead and keep going, I suppose.
Oh yeah.
Do you want to drop to 4th place?
Well, no, just kind of wrapping off Fnatic. Next week they have Super Hot Crew and SK Gaming. Again, it's going to be a big week for SK Gaming as to what they're going to be able to pull off against Fnatic. Is Fnatic going to continue their rise upwards? Super Hot Crew is going to be very interesting, and we'll be moving on to them next. But they're a team that's been moving up very steadily, committing very nice scores to my LCS fantasy roster. I just don't have the confidence in them. I really don't. And
They've been middling.
We're going to move on to them next. They had an impressive 3-1 Super Week. They had a pretty easy schedule, though. They were up against Alliance, SK Gaming, Copenhagen Wolves, and Millennium. Now, we can 2020 look back and say that was a pretty easy week because of the way that SK was performing. But I think if you were to look at the schedule and say, oh, wow, Alliance, SK, and how is Millennium going to do? Oh, we have Dan back now.
Sorry about that. I think my computer is overheating. My room is literally 100 degrees hot, and my laptop is having trouble handling this.
Oh, no, that's the worst. We are on Super Hot Crew. We were just talking about how they had a pretty decent week going 3-1. Thoughts?
Okay, so actually I was really proud of Super Hot Crew this week. They did not throw games against lesser teams. I guess that's a kind of a strong term to use, but Copenhagen Wolves and Millennium. And they played really clean against SK. They played an excellent game of League of Legends. They snowballed all of their advantages perfectly, and they won. That was probably the cleanest game I've ever seen them win. And I was really impressed with them. And then their game against Alliance was kind of the exact opposite happened to them, though. Alliance got a lead, and they snowballed it perfectly, and they never really had a chance to come back. But 3-1 for them is huge. I mean, I honestly, originally I was not a fan. Optimus Tom has always been trying to get me on the bandwagon, but after this last week and after the week before, yeah, I'm a fan of the Super Hot Crew. I'm on the hype train. I don't. They're not gonna get first by any means, and they might not even get second. But I think that they will finish top 4. Like they are gonna lock into top 4. I'm 100% confident in that. Yeah,
I could believe that.
I agree. I think a fall, I should say, of practice is going to do the world for them. I think whatever they found this split is really gelling for them, and they should be able to take this momentum and be a pretty decent contender in the upcoming weeks. But I totally agree. I don't see them moving much further up than where they are now. They're going to be kind of the gatekeeper, basically. They're going to be the agitator for the top 3, being able to peel games off of people and knock those other teams down. Speaking of which, they're up against Fnatic, in Gambit, so they're going to be playing up at the top and on the bottom. They're slumming it this week.
1-1. I think Fnatic will beat them. But I mean, Gambit's free wins, and when we get to Gambit, we can talk more about that. But yeah,
we have a while because we got to move all the way down the ranks.
Well, we pretty much just summarized it, but I guess we'll go into more detail on why they're free wins.
So next up on our roster is Millennium, sitting currently in 5th place at 5-5, triple fives. Good for you, Millennium.
They're not 5-5 though. That's
not updated.
Their actual record.
They're 6-9.
6-9.
I think.
I don't know how you got to there. That was the record.
Maybe I was stuck on 5s. Got 5 on the brain.
6-9. They're 18. They played 18 games, so 6-9 can't be their record.
Math is.
They're 9-9. They are even. They're at 500 right now, guys.
Oh my goodness. 5s, 9s.
Yeah.
Well, they dropped 2 spots though. They were. I think people kind of overlooked the fact that Millennium was 3rd place coming into this week. And then that 1-3 record dropped them. They were solely in 3rd place. Ahead of Fnatic, ahead of Super Hot Crew. Yeah.
See, they're so hot and cold. And I mean, they are. So let's go.
They're
through.
Katy Perry.
They lost against Fnatic, Super Hot Crew, and Rockcat, and won versus Gambit. So they get the gimme win, but they lose the 3 other matches that potentially matter.
Yeah. Well, Rockcat looked bad too, until this week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, their game versus Rockcat was the only game where I thought that they played pretty well. Like that was a really close game. But their game versus Gambit, like I don't even know why I brought it up. Yeah, their game versus Gambit was a game of League of Legends, I guess. But they lost to Fnatic. Fnatic played in top form this week, and I'm not surprised. Like the fact that Fnatic has ever lost to them is surprising to me. But I mean, Fnatic cleans them out this game. Super Hot Crew was playing as their best this week, I would say, the best I've ever seen them play, and they took a win off them. I'm not surprised. I think Millennium is really hot and cold, but I also just think that a lot of the times when they're running hot, other teams are running cold. So I think even when they're playing their best, they can't really compete with the top teams playing their best.
Right.
I would seriously agree with that, and that's been Millennium's pattern, right? Mm-hmm. I just think that a lot of the teams have been struggling, underperforming. Fnatic being the most notable example, but I think SK a little bit, Super Hot Crew in the beginning a little bit.
I think Super
It
Hot
gave
Crew
them an
is
opening. It gave them an opening they wouldn't have otherwise had. They did take advantage of it, which I give them credit for, but I think if these other teams start getting at the level that they should be at, then Millennium is going to sort of settle back. But I don't see them going into relegation, so they're definitely going to be a top team.
So
It's
if-
just not top.
If Super Hot Crew's the gatekeeper for the top 3, then Millennium's the gatekeeper for relegation, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, after Rockets week, which I guess we'll talk about in a second, I don't know who's going to be that third team to go into relegation, because it's getting close between those few. Because obviously all 4 of the middle teams, the 3rd through 6th place, go into the playoffs, but one of those 4 goes into relegation regardless.
Right.
So
Right. No, that's interesting. I wonder how that will play out.
I mean, it became a
we'll cover that probably next week, I think, because we're going to be at that point. We're going to have a set amount of games. We're going to have lots more, I guess, to put to it in terms of how much movement. So let's earmark that conversation for next week, taking some predictions on how relegations are going to go down, or at least who's going to be put into relegation. Millennium isn't going to have fun next week. It's not going to be a fun time. They're going up against Alliance, who probably is going to be snapping to attention. Don't take anybody for granted. Just walking over Millennium. I don't think Alliance is going to treat them very nicely.
If they
And,
don't walk over them, then there's a serious problem.
Then yeah, right. That's when Fnatic is probably going to be looking to be the better first place team in that case. But they also go against Copenhagen Wolves, which in a very weird way, I think is going to be a very big challenge for Millennium. We're going to hit Copenhagen Wolves, unfortunately, last in this split, but let's just put a pin in that for now and move on. I'll tell you why Millennium's going to have such a hard time against Copenhagen Wolves.
Okay, David Spade.
Let's go on to Rockhat. Rockhat had a pretty good week, all things considered. They do currently sit in 6th place at 8-10, losing to only Fnatic, but pulling off wins against the Copenhagen Wolves, Millennium, and Fnatic, which isn't right. That's not right. No. They lost. Ha! Typos. Silly typos. So they lost against Fnatic. Lost Fnatic. Boom.
they have that on there twice now.
Do we?
All right. I thought we were agreeing to not too drunk
Well,
before we showed up.
All right.
They beat Gambit as their last game.
While you figure
They
this
beat
out.
Gambit as their last game.
They
Right.
beat Gambit, which
Okay.
the reason he forgot was because that game was so unmemorable that it just was not worth putting on the spreadsheet, like the rest of the Gambit games this week. But the win versus Copenhagen Wolves, I mean, we'll talk about. I think we should just save that for Copenhagen Wolves, because I think the whole issue with Copenhagen Wolves as a team in general is that, well, there's a ton of them. We'll talk about those in a second. But the win versus Millennium was pretty close, and the win versus Gambit was a total stomp, as expected. I think them playing against Fnatic, them losing to Fnatic was not too surprising. I think that Fnatic had a better pick ban phase, and I think that, like we talked about earlier, Fnatic was on their A game, and I don't think Rockhat really stood a chance.
My problem with Rockhat right now is that I see them as one of the teams who are very realistically going to get put to relegations. But I know they're one of those teams that as soon as they get back to relegations, they're not going to get relegated. They're just going to go in with a whole different mindset. Excuse me. They're going to destroy anybody who comes out of the challenger scene. And they're just going to plop right back into, the spring split come whenever that starts. I forget actually when that starts now. But they're just going to hop back into it and probably be another middling team, really hot and cold. I mean, Overpow, Optimus Tom would be sitting here weeping, talking about his bromance with him. But
The only thing I think that could switch that up is if, for instance, Overpow gets picked off by another team. If their roster changes up in the middle there, which could happen.
I see. The thing is that I think if you're the management of Rockhat, you see Overpow as like your biggest asset.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you don't want to get rid of him. It's almost like, in some sports team when you build around somebody, you want to build around Overpow and give him the proper jungler and give him the proper top lane that can alleviate pressure and allow him to just do what he does, which is dominate with awesome champions.
My fingers crossed that Overpower will get picked up by SK. We'll have a super team.
I don't know. I think
Team.
I think Rockhat is just G and EU. I think they will survive relegation. I think they'll go to the relegation tournament. They'll survive relegation, and they'll come back and they'll do mediocrely again, and they might get relegated again, and they'll probably come back. Kind of how I feel about EG at this point. And I think even if they swap players, I think that they're just not, their macro game just isn't good enough to keep them playing at this level. But it's good enough to keep them in the bottom of the EU LCS.
Well, speaking of the bottom of the EU LCS, they're not going to go any higher than they are today. They've got an SK Gaming with something to prove next week, and they also have Alliance, also with something to prove, but for two totally different reasons. That's going to be a very hard week, and a win may be a little more telling than anything, but I don't see much action coming off for them out of that.
The good news is they're safe in 6th place, because 7th and 8th are doing so horribly, atrociously bad that they can literally not show up for a week and still be in 6th.
So that means they just need to beat the 3rd place team in the tournament, and they're fine.
Yeah, pretty much.
Assuming that all holds to form.
So, speaking of those
Bottom 2.
gross people, Glorious Gambit Gaming, as Optimus Tom, who isn't here to defend himself, so we'll take all the liberties that we can.
All right.
Glorious Gambit Gaming, 7th place, 5-13. Loss SK Gaming. Loss Millennium. Loss Fnatic.
How the mighty have fallen.
Rockhat.
And there's one
All right, I
HUD
want to start off
keyboard
by
with a
saying
really
this
terrible
was Optimus
picture.
Tom's team to watch this week, and I apologize to everybody who took that suggestion.
No, it is the team to watch. It's the team to watch on how to not win games.
It's
Yeah.
team to
That's
watch,
something
sort of
you're
like a
interested
train
in.
wreck. You know you,
If you wanted
shouldn't look, but you can't turn your head away.
If you wanted to watch Bronze versus Challenger games,
Wow.
This is it right
Games
here.
to watch if your team is playing Gambit in fantasy.
Yeah.
There
If you wanted to
go.
watch, if it's like
Points.
Gambit playing a bronze level team, was everyone else playing Gambit this week? That's pretty much what it looked like to me.
It's funny. I was reading through some posts in a variety of different places. I forget where I saw this. It was probably either Reddit or Twitter. Edward came out and was like, "Yeah, I hate, our performance right now. I think I'm pretty good." But sorry to the fans for the team being so bad. It's like, that is textbook you've got fucking problems Gambit right there. When somebody's coming out and saying that. It doesn't matter if it's Edward or if it's anybody else on that team.
It doesn't even matter if it's true. You just
Edward-
don't have your team talking like that.
Yeah,
Period.
Edward just wants to go back to being a free agent. He came to NA
Wants to
once.
come
He'll
back
come
to
back.
America.
Yeah, or just to another EU team. He's like, "Hey
It's
guys,
warmer here."
I'm throwing you under the bus, but I'll be okay, so it'll be fine.
But I'm good.
Don't worry about it. But I'm still good. Don't worry."
Hey, is Riot hiring?
That's it, right? That's the career path. If you
the Deficio
competitive.
career path.
The problem is that there's just this suspicion in my mind. It's that little tick that says that Gambit does get pushed to relegation, but they still don't lose. I have a feeling that
don't
just
see it, dude. I just don't see it.
the experience, though, like when you're on the wire, when that is your job, any uncertainties pending. I mean, basically, like right now, the question you have to be asking is who in Europe needs the support? That's the first one, because where's Edward's motivations, I guess. What other members of Gambit are going to be looking to move around? Basically, what's their motivation for staying a team in their current capacity? Is the paycheck good enough? Like, I think there's the motivation to stick around. I think Gambit as a team will pull their shit together and get out of relegation. Will they perform in the next split? Maybe. It could.
I don't think they're gonna make it. I think they're gonna go to relegation, and I think if they make it to relegation as the team they are now, like if they win, it'll be pure luck. But given that they are probably going to end the split in 8th place, I think that they're going to get stuck with whatever the strongest team coming out of the Challenger League is, and I think that they're going to get stomped on.
Yeah, I
See,
gotta agree.
I just think that the experience in relegation is what counts. More
Except-
than anything.
Now there's all these okay, so the rumor, the Reddit rumor, I don't know, the endless Skype chats I'm involved in, rumors spinning around at this point is, are Diamond and Darian gone? Like, are they going to get rid of those two players? And I think that they should. Like, based on these performances, I think that they need to in some way improve these players. And I think Darian has always had kind of this trolley attitude bringing to the game. And don't get me wrong, I love him as a top laner, but when your team has serious issues, you need people who can take it seriously. And Diamond is, hands down, has always been a very strong jungler, but not necessarily a very strong player. Like, you could not take Diamond out of the jungle and put him in another role. Diamond is very good at the jungle. He is very good at the macro game of the jungle, and he is mechanically good at most of the champions involved in jungling. But outside of that, like, I don't think he has good lane sense. I don't think he has any of the other skills necessary to prosper. He's not Insec. He's Diamond, and Diamond is good at jungling, and that is all he's good at. And if he's not performing in that role, then I don't think he's worth keeping.
And I think he's probably going to be increasingly relied on in a leadership capacity if they do kick some of the veteran players out. So that problem is only going to be, I mean, if they got rid of Darian, which I agree would be a good idea, if they got rid of Edward, it sounds like he wants to be gone, then a lot of leadership, you got to start looking in Diamond's direction. I think those problems are only going to be exacerbated if that's the case.
Well,
You know what's going to happen, guys? You know what's going to happen? They're going to go down to relegation. Alex each in the promotion tournament.
all we heard is
It's going to happen.
All we heard is relegation Alex Each promotion tournament.
That's all you need to hear.
Did that not come through?
Three.
Oh,
I'm
wow.
glad
Yeah,
I'm not
no,
the
you
only
could
one with
tell.
people cutting out.
Gambit's going to go down, and they're going to play them.
Relegation tournament.
Yeah. Well, hey, Audacity got it. It's okay.
There we go. So looking at their week coming up, up against Copenhagen Wolves and Super Hot Crew. We'll get into Copenhagen Wolves in just a second, but Super Hot Crew, I think these are two easy wins for the others, unfortunately. Sad to say, but I don't see much movement on Gambit. But Copenhagen Wolves, 8th place, 4-14. Losses to Rockhat, Super Hot Crew, SK Gaming. And here's the good part, a win versus Alliance. The howl was heard in Europe for the first time in quite some time. What do you guys think before I go on my little sprint?
All right. So we talked about the game versus Alliance earlier, which is their only win this week, and it was because Alliance, I think, was playing poorly, not because Copenhagen Wolves was playing especially well. I mean, if they had gone 4-0 in the week, then I think we could attribute it to them. But I think given that they went 1-3, it's most likely that Alliance was not playing as well as they normally do, and I don't think they were. From having watched the game, I think that Alliance was playing terribly, and I think that they threw the game away. And that's awesome that the Copenhagen Wolves got a win off of that, but I don't think it's any indication that they're going to perform better in the future. And I think that the core problem with Copenhagen Wolves has and always will be early game aggression. Mm-hmm. They play as aggressive as they can. They force bad fights, and if those bad fights turn in their favor, then they can get a lead and they can win a game. But they give the enemy team so much room to outplay mechanically. Like, there's no reason for them to perform 1v1 tower dives. There's no reason for them to risk a 2v1 tower dive if they don't think they have 100% kill, but they do it anyway, on risk that someone is going to miss a skill shot, or on risk that someone's going to get something wrong. But they don't. They do it. They do it anyway, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't.
I think, just looking at what they had this Super Week, what they have coming up, I think Copenhagen Wolves has a big momentum start that they can go off of. First of all, before we get into it, I don't think they're going to make it any higher than a position that results in relegation. If for some crazy reason, I don't even know if the math will work for it, but if for some reason they find themselves not immediately relegated, I think they're going to instantly get shot down to a relegation spot. And that's going to be the hardest games of probably their lives, whether or not they get to keep their jobs immediately. But they have a win over Alliance, the number one team, 8 beats 1. that's no matter how it happened, whether it was Alliance fault or Copenhagen Wolves doing well, that's a huge confidence boost. And you saw it after the game. They did their howl. They were pumped. Casters were pumped. Fans were kind of pumped as well. That's a great thing for a team to share when it comes to League of Legends and being able to have that experience. Then, next week, they're going to be playing Gambit Gaming, which they can win, and Millennium, which I will argue if they can beat Gambit, they can also win. I think you go on a spirit high, you get in there, you crush Gambit Gaming, you move on to Millennium, who can be hot and cold, and you pull off another win. Is it going to move you much? Are you going to be a great team that doesn't get relegated? Probably not. But it's going to be
you'll be in
interesting.
7th.
Yeah, exactly. You're going to get wins. You're going to get experience. You're going to be at least a little bit more confident in yourself.
Which is huge, to be fair. 7th, if you're going
That's
to a
a big
relegation
deal.
tournament,
7th is a big deal.
difference between 8th, because not getting forced into last pick against who you're going to get relegated against, like who you have to play in the relegation tournament, is pretty big. Like last split, LMQ was in the NA relegation tournament, and I mean whoever got played against them was screwed, right? So no one wanted to get 8th place. To be fair, they played against Vulcan or XTG, and I mean that was free wins anyway. But if they had played against another team, I mean LMQ was good at that point in this split. No one had caught up to LMQ on a skill level in the NA LCS, so I think they could have relegated a team like Curse. I think they probably could have relegated at that time CLG, because that was right around when Neon Tansa was leaving. So I think that you really have to, 7th place is a big deal, I think, for Copenhagen Wolves if they want to survive. But I don't think they're going to get out of relegation. I think you're right on that.
Now, the one thing we do have to keep in
think
mind, and I don't know how much has changed in the challenger scene for Europe, but last split, the teams that went into relegation came out. You know, no challenger team is able to top an LCS team, so it'll be interesting to see whether or not that's going to happen again. I personally don't follow the challenger scene too much, so I don't know what these teams are walking into.
I think with the meltdowns coming out
You're
of
cutting in and out.
specifically, there's going to be at least one turnover. I don't know how to fix that right now.
That's okay.
To reiterate for the viewers, he said, with the number of meltdowns coming through, he thinks that at least one of the teams is going to be relegated.
Yeah.
Just because of how inconsistently the teams are playing and how poorly Copenhagen Wolves are playing. Yeah, so Gambit. We're all just saying Gambit's gone.
It's just Gambit.
The last
Yeah,
hope for
that's
Gambit is the infamous Gambit boot camp, where they band together and live in a team house for a couple of weeks and figure out how to play League of Legends again for
Not this time.
whatever tournament. But I don't think it's this time, because the only person on their team who plays well anymore is NIQ, I think it's NIQ, is their mid laner, and he literally he is lucky that he's playing on that team, because it is the best resume he could hope for. Hey, I'm going 4-1-10 in every single one of these games, and my team is still losing. You know, pick me up. This whole thing is a career
that could
boost
be
for him.
awesome. Just send free agency. Just send all the players out, and I don't know. I guess maybe Gambit picks up some young and hopeful European team, and I don't know, carries on. But let's cross the pond and move over into NA as we quickly run out of time. But we'll probably end up going a little bit over anyway. Fuck it, let's just do it. So it's kind of weird where we want to start in North America, because there's so many first place teams. Let's start with Dignitas. Wins this week against Evil Geniuses and TSM. Losses against Complexity and Cloud9. Dignitas. There's an interesting team. A team that was doing so good in the beginning and then gets hit with the big fat stick of inconsistencies.
I'd like to just point out, hopefully without cutting out real quick, that every team,
yeah, we're gonna just have you.
5 teams this week in NA went 2-2. So this is about the most even as a Super Week as we could have.
Well, sure, but Dignitas, who was commanding number 1, and to reiterate the point, a lot of teams went 2-2 this week.
It's a very close split, I think, is what we're going for here. It's very, very close.
It's a close split, but you lost to Complexity.
Which I don't think is as big of an insult after this week, to be fair. And we'll talk about that when we get to Complexity. They surprised me this week.
We've got a while, so. I mean, Dignitas, it's one of those things where I drank the fruit punch in the beginning of the split. I really thought that there was going to be a lot to this team. I think there still is a lot to this team, but
Guys, one sec on a Gambit note. I'm just checking a press release on Reddit. Darien and Diamond are being moved to subs.
Oh shit! Dude, super weak.
I'm going to take credit for that, even though someone else told me about it.
They're considering it. They put out a press release saying they're considering it. But you know who did the same thing?
It's done.
Evil Geniuses, and they did it.
Wait, what?
Evil Geniuses put out press releases. They were considering dropping their 3 oldest players, and they dropped 2 of them. So
okay, I thought you said that Evil Geniuses were either picking them up or something like that. But
no, although
that would be cool.
It'd be the worst idea.
Like the European immigrant station.
all that means to me is
Give us you're tired,
my
you're
gosh.
poor. You're huddled junglers yearning to be free.
we know these 2 suck. We're trying to replace them. If we find people who work, we're going to replace them. If we don't, they're still on the team.
The thing
Good
is, I don't think. First of all, that could be Gambit management saying fire under Gambit's ass. Start playing like Gambit and maybe not get relegated. Or that could be a legitimate, hey, this is happening next week, see ya. Or, hey, this is happening at the end of the split. We'll have to see. But Dignitas at this point is fighting for first. Like, that's really all they have. And they came out really confident, saying that they had their eyes on Europe. They had an amazing record in the beginning. They were doing so well. Really convincing wins, awesome plays. Now, I mean, I see it as sort of fizzling out. They're losing kind of stupid games. Who did they lose to? Who were they playing when it was like they only got 1 kill and it was just a complete stop? Was that Complexity again?
Yeah, they played against Complexity. They got
fuck
1
is
kill,
with
and Complexity got 14 kills. Complexity has really strong late game. They pick late game scaling champions, and they team fight well in the late game. But they suck at everything else. They're laning strong too, because they're a bunch of solo queue players. But
Yeah. Well,
their mid game is just I will talk about Complexity at length because I actually got really invested in this team this week.
Dignitas, I know Dignitas is middle of the ground right now, and unfortunately for NA fans, when it comes to Worlds, we need what Cloud9 was. We need a unifying front that we can get behind and who can win games and who can do so consistently and frequently. Dignitas was that. They've kind of taken a step back. It'll be interesting to see how they finish out. They have LMQ next week and they have CLG next week. They're going to have just a shit end for this. I mean, CLG, LMQ, I think LMQ's fighting for top spots. LMQ's fighting for top spots. This is going to be a team to watch. Those 2 games are going to be big in terms of the standings. We only have 3 weeks left. 2 of those weeks are regular weeks. It ends week 11 with an additional super week. A lot can change in those amounts of times, but this is setting the stage for that final super week. I'm excited for it already.
Yay.
But let's keep it rolling. Going into LMQ, another 2-2 team, currently sitting tied for first place with 11-7. Losses against C9, Curse. Ooh, I don't want to get to that point in the conversation. Wins against CLG and EG. LMQ, the great inconsistency.
Yeah, well, they seemed unkillable at the beginning. We talked about it at length, that it was really just a matter of time before teams were able to prepare and adapt to them. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's no doubt they're still a high-quality team, but they're no longer as bulletproof as they once seemed, say, the first 3-4 weeks. And I think you're seeing it now. You're starting to see some of the limits of their ability to just steamroll people, because they can be prepped for. Their early games, especially like their level 1s, level 2s, are extremely predictable. Teams are noticing this, and they're starting to take advantage.
What I like, though, is that if you don't respect them, they will destroy you.
Oh, yeah.
That
well, I mean,
I
they're
love.
number 1 for a reason.
Well, tied for number 1. I mean, they could be. They're technically, in the way that NA esports standings rankings places them, they're technically in the number 2 spot. I don't know. Actually, no, they're now sitting at number 1. quote unquote. And I think that actually does take into consideration how many what their spread is against the other individual teams. So CLG, Dignitas, and TSM, who are the other teams jockeying for number one. But they're the gatekeepers at this point. Do I think they're going to go ahead and be that number one team at the end of the split? No. No, I think the other teams have the experience to get their shit together and win. But it is a good aggravator, a team that you have to take into consideration and who's going to be a challenge and may take you down a peg in your matchup and might knock you down. So it's an awesome force to have in there, especially since we're seeing them straight out of Challenger. Like to me, that's great. That's great to see a different group come into the North American scene, move in, and shake things up as much as they did.
They're not really a challenger team, though. I mean, they were a Chinese
Sure.
pro team that used the
Sure.
challenger scene to launch themselves in the position they're at. They're not
Well,
like a Cloud9.
Regardless, they're okay. Well, let's compare them to the other international import, the Evil Geniuses. They're shaking things up, throwing wins left and right. So I don't know. I see them as a force of odd goodness in North America. But the other team that has honestly pleasantly surprised me this week. Before we move on, rather, LMQ's week, upcoming Dignitas game and Complexity. This is a first place versus first place matchup, which is awesome. There's two of them next week in North America: CLG versus TSM and LMQ versus Dignitas. So we're going to see some good movements. We're going to see some separation there. How long that will last, I don't know. But a game against Complexity, you can try to convince me otherwise, but Bubba Dub's mustache doesn't do anything for me, and I don't think they're going anywhere. Let's see. So moving on to CLG. Having another mediocre week, tied with everybody else in terms of the 2-2 split. Losses versus Curse, which I'm pretty sure that game didn't actually happen. A loss versus LMQ and wins versus Cloud9 and Complexity. CLG is an interesting team right now to me because it feels like the old CLG. It feels like the CLG that's going to go out there and win everything.
I still can't. I just can't get behind them. I mean, I feel
Okay.
a lot of pride that Aframu is coming into his own with double lift. That's cool. It's great to see the way those two work together. I think they're one of the model bot lanes in any LCS. But I still think double lift is an asshole. I still think Seraph is horrifically overrated.
I don't think.
Is he overrated, really?
I think
feel like-
Seraph
yeah.
came in as overrated as being this Korean
Yeah,
hype guy.
yeah,
I don't
that.
think anyone thinks it anymore. I think he's
picked
playing
him in
well.
fantasy, and I'm not happy.
I think he's playing better this week than he ever has. But I think that the issue that I saw this week is that the game that I saw where they put him on Shyvana after first picking Lulu, like they should have given him Lulu top. He's much better at Lulu top than he is at Shyvana, and he does much more for the team, especially on a team where like the best strategy you've ever had is protect your AD carry, and Lulu does a way better job of doing that than Shyvana. But that being said, Double Lift played horribly this week. His positioning and every team fight was bad. I mean, their loss versus LMQ, two of them went bot, and he just didn't know where to go. Like you watched him just continue auto attacking at melee range against a Renekton, with a TF coming in to gold card him because he just didn't know where to be. Not that I would. I'm not a good AD carry, but this is the thing I expect from him is to not get gold carded. I expect people to burn summoners to kill him. I don't expect him to just be in the wrong place.
Didn't he break some record this week, like 500?
500 kills, I think it was.
Yeah, 500 kills in this season or this split or something like that.
I think it's overall LCS. Or like,
Yeah, it's over.
And I mean, the same thing happened with X Special with his 1,000 assists, I think.
Yeah.
It's over 100 games was the stat for X Special, so I assume it's the same stat for Double Lift. He might have
Yeah,
more kills
they've been
now,
in,
though.
they've been in for the same time though. I mean, they've both been in for the entirety of the LCS. So
Yeah.
it's
And
gonna
we
be
had the CS record set as well.
for
That's-
XPK.
Yeah.
That to me, CLG success, and I don't mean to belittle it. I've been really enjoying watching CLG, and I root for them when Dignitas doesn't win. But I can only imagine that their immediate success is due to the failures of teams like TSM and Cloud9 who were dominating before. I mean, if you were to put TSM and Cloud9 up where they theoretically should be compared to their last season's performance, they just moved down with everybody else. So to me, the success is more because of Cloud9 more than TSM, really. Cloud9's kind of utter failure this split.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt that CLG they're better. They've been on sort of a rise even since last split, where they've sort of just been on this steady slope upward. But I just can't get behind them as a team and as an organization.
Well, it's kind of hard to get behind a team that's 6-7 against all teams not named Complexity and EG. I mean, but they've beaten Dignitas both times they've played, so that's at least heartening. And they've beaten every other top team. I mean, they're even or negative against them, the rest of them. But
that's, to me right now, what matters most to me is what can you do against SK Telecom. Not
I
much,
think
CLG. It's just that's all I care about this split. I mean, my heart was Spring.
Let's be okay. First, SK Telecom is no longer the standard of Korean teams. SK Telecom isn't that good anymore. They're not the
Samsung
top.
is right.
Samsung or Najin are the ones you want to look at for top teams, at least for last champions. But the other thing is part of the reason why this split is so competitive is a little bit because some of the teams have dropped and are performing worse. But all of these teams that are in the top are as good as Cloud9 was in the prior split at the game. I just want to make that clear. Like, these teams are getting better. The reason that they're close,
that though, why?
They're better at the macro game. They're better at understanding how to play League of Legends. They're better at making team comps and making appropriate selections and champions select. They're better at playing champions that are good, not champions that they like. Like, we don't see, very rarely do we see just weird champions. Like, Zion Spartan has not played Riven, and I mean, part of that is because Riven was nerfed a long time ago. But I think even if Riven was somehow, in theory, viable in the top lane, we wouldn't see it just because it's not a pick that goes well into just about any team comp. It's a solo queue pick at best. And so I think teams as a whole, like, the macro game in North America has improved, and I think a lot of that is, like, outside influences and coaching coming in. I think that is a lot of pressure from LMQ coming into the scene and being a team that, while not necessarily having a great macro game, has such high mechanical skill to force teams to play on a higher level.
Well, then I'm very much so looking forward to next week when we start to discuss how this is going to wrap off, because at this point it's one of these four teams who's going to, or two of these four teams rather, right, that move into Worlds. We get to send two people. We
This
get
should
to
be
send
three still.
three.
We send 3 still.
Okay.
Because Riot's
It's changed
ridiculous.
a little bit.
Oh, stupid Riot changing things.
There should be like a coefficient that says more teams are better in Korea. Let's send more of them. But
Yeah, there's no...
more people watch
I
NA
agree.
and EU than anyone, so it's a viewers kind of number, I think.
Riot, never forget that you're NA. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I think it is.
Next
I
time
think-
NA gets Worlds, we find out they're going to Mexico and Canada too. God
Right.
damn, man, come on.
So we are running very short on time. Our imaginary clock is ticking. Let's bump it down to TSM. But before we do that, CLG has TSM next week. They also have Dignitas. So it's going to be a really big switch-up week. I suppose if you're going to watch any team in the North American scene, Dignitas is definitely one of them to watch. Dignitas and CLG, basically. They cover all of the top teams.
I'd say if
in
you have...
terms of that movement.
If you have a time for a top for a top team, yeah, it's one of those two. Don't watch any games, including the bottom 3 teams. Well, no, Curse is doing well now. I shouldn't say that. Don't
No,
watch any
shut up.
games,
Curse isn't a
including
team.
Complexity.
What is going
the
on
games
with
are
Curse?
boring.
We'll
the
get
games are
there
boring.
at some point
All right,
further down the line.
TSM.
Let's get through this.
TSM. 3-1 wins against Complexity, Evil Geniuses, loss against Dignitas, and the only team able to topple off Curse this week. I'm
So
not there yet.
TSM beat all the low teams again. What a surprise.
And this is funny because in an interview with Dyrus, I think after their Complexity game, the new announcers, who I'm not sure if I like yet on the broadcast, said like, "Oh, you guys are 9-0 against all the bottom teams." And Darius was like, "Oh, great, we're awesome against all the people who suck." Like, it's true. I still don't see TSM being able to pull their shit together. I think Darius still has huge attitude problems. I think Bjergsen is so good that people get too prepared for him, and with a lack of pressure from Amazing not doing as well as we'd want, and their bottom lane being gimped by Glebe, I don't see this team doing much. And
They'll pick up Edward. They'll grab Edward.
No. I think Glebe's good. Glebe is good. Glebe is good. I think he needs to exploit Glebe.
False. Show me. Make
the
a
games
compilation.
the games they win. Oh, did you see the hook on double lift? I know that's the only Glebe moment we can talk about. It's like the one flay he got in the enemy's base where he knocked someone out of, like he knocked Fizz out of his E, and the one hook he got on double lift. But it's good. Those are good things. And his positioning is okay. He messes up sometimes. But I think the biggest issue is Amazing. I think Amazing is not amazing. I think Amazing is crap. I think he plays poorly.
No. Glebe, okay. Glebe should move down to Louisiana because he cannot fucking hit a wave on anything. Get triggered
Really?
too soon.
Really?
Jesus. Invite Freak, and he too will cringe at that, whatever that was.
He is out of position all the time. He's always getting caught. He's not a good support. He's supposed to be their shot caller. Bjergsen apparently has now stepped up, and he wants to be the vocal part of the team. It's a huge problem for them. I think Amazing does okay. He's not the best jungler in the world. I think he's trying to force Jarvan a little bit too much, and I'm not really sure why. But I just think overall that's their problem is Glebe. I mean, Wild Turtle's a good player, but you need a strong support. You need the ability for Wild Turtle to ramp up. And if it doesn't happen...
If only they didn't run a world-class support right out of their team.
You know what, though? I support that. Because if it's an attitude problem, it's way too hard to fix. Like, these are very young people.
Special is good, but if he's cocky and he's not listening to Reggie, that's an issue. Like, I think Reggie is an idiot. Like, I think he's probably a bad manager, and the only reason his organization is doing so well is because his team is doing so well. Mm-hmm. But, I mean, I don't know that for sure, but just from the way he talks in interviews and from the press release after the on-gamers, that was...
Oop, Dan, you're breaking it.
That was dumb. That was dumb. All right, anyway, don't like Reggie, don't like how he does his business, but an attitude problem, if you can't fix it, is bad. It's unfixable. I think it would do infinitely more damage to try to keep him on and try to fix that attitude problem with a team around than it would to just bench him.
I don't know. I can't fall back in love with TSM yet. I know they're tied for number one. I know they're doing better than what they were doing in the beginning, but I just see so many problems with that team that they've got a lot of work to do. And I think it's going to be swapping out Glebe with Crepo when EG disbands. Maybe picking up Snoopy. Wow, what a team.
Are you
really?
who?
How delusional are you right now?
I'm pretty delusional. No, I don't know. I play too much.
No lie, Crepa would actually be a fantastic pickup for him. But
I agree. I was more or less just kidding about Snoopy. We lost Dan again. I think
You're back now.
Yeah, I think Glebe just needs to go, and I think Amazing can do okay. I think he would do pretty well. I hope he doesn't get kicked for their current performance because it's not that bad. But I don't know. I just see TSM overall as just not being a team that's there yet. Their attitude is the reason. They've got plenty of skill. They just can't get there. But
they've got a tough week coming up, and if they can win one or two, then I'll feel a little bit better about them. But playing CLG and C9, who's are they one game behind right now? They're one game behind first place. So despite being quote unquote fifth, I'm cutting out probably, but
no, you're still there.
But they're still right there. So if they can win one or if they can win both games, I'll feel all right about TSM. But until that point, they've really got to get some wins over the top teams.
The problem is I don't doubt they can get out of North America and into Worlds. I just don't think they're going to perform in Worlds. That's the problem. I mean, where the All Stars is one thing, you know. Sure, only the number one team goes.
Wait a minute. You really think TSM is going to go to Worlds?
I think there's potential for it.
What?
I
No.
definitely think there's
No.
potential for it.
Not
Right
even.
now? You think with this team they're gonna finish top
I
3?
think if we're sending 3 teams, if what you guys
It's
are
going to be
telling me-
LMQ, CLG, and Cloud9, and that's pretty much the way it's going to be.
And maybe
unless
Dig's
Dignitas has a huge
still
upset
there.
somewhere.
Dig. I think we
Cloud-
stick with Dig, LMQ, CLG. I think it's too close
All
to
right.
make an official decision. I think
Okay,
you just
let's-
go off the top 3.
Let's rewind. Well, let's fast forward a little bit. Let's cut over to Cloud9. So 2-2 this week, currently sitting in 5th place, 10-8 wins versus LMQ and Dignitas, losses versus CLG and Curse. Tell me why, just from what you've seen so far this split, they're a team that's going to make it to Worlds.
More than TSM, I think they're rallying. I think the real question is whether it's going to be Dig or Cloud9 that gets that 3rd spot. And Cloud9 beat them today, so it really is anybody's game on that. But, I mean, there's no room for TSM in that equation. If there were 4 or 5 spots for Worlds, sure, why not? But TSM is basically like the super hot crew of North America. They're going to be middle road, and that's pretty much where they're going to stay. They might be good gatekeepers. They might be good spoilers. They may rally next year. But for this split, their chances of going to Worlds, I am pretty confident in saying, are nil.
See, I feel the same way about Cloud9. I think Cloud9 was such a dominant team before that it got to their heads a little bit, and not to the point where they started to misperform, but as soon as they started to, as soon as a couple of teams took some wins off of them, that got in their heads. And the worst part is the fan base is totally not behind Cloud9 right now. You watch any Cloud9 game, and when they get a big play made against them, the crowd explodes because Cloud9 was so good before that they became the bad guys. They became the team to beat, and that if you could beat them, that you were pretty okay. And I know when we get to Complexity, somebody's going to bring up the fact that Complexity has a 100% win rate against Cloud9. And that's something that I know Complexity as a team takes a lot of pride in. But right now, I just think Cloud9 is an emotional mess.
Really? I mean, they still had a good week.
They did have a good week.
They had, which we could talk about now because we can make progress eventually. I mean, they took down 2 number 1 teams. They lost to another number 1 team and lost to the hot,
That's-
huge air quotes for Curse.
But
So-
it's not what Cloud9 was. And you have to look at it from that perspective. You have to look at it from how the team performed. They haven't made any roster changes. So you
Everyone-
can't-
I do what I want.
Everyone caught up. That's all that happened. Everyone caught up
Okay.
and got better.
But that's
like,
fine.
and there's
But-
still a game out of first. I think they're still in great shape.
They're not. But the thing is they're, in my mind, they're untested in that regard because they were so dominant before. They haven't changed a lot. And I think we've always said in previous episodes that the individual skill level hasn't really been there for Cloud9. Like
Yeah.
each player together isn't that great. So it's their team play that puts it together. But if people are figuring them out or if patches are changing and that's what's causing them to start to be more deficient, first of all, are they mentally prepared to take the losses? Because we have evidence that that's a huge factor in players. And 2, do they have the experience in making those kinds of drastic changes to what they're doing to support more wins? Because in the past, what happened? They lost a game, they figured out why they lost, and they fixed it, and they end up dominating in the previous games. Now they're losing game after game after game. That weighs heavy on the soul. They're a Thresh with many stacks. Do I think they have potential to go to Worlds? I said nil before. I think it's pretty good. They are a skilled team, but do they have the mental advantage over a team like Dignitas, CLG, and maybe LMQ? That's
They're all 2-1 against.
It's going to be tough. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be this simple thing that just happens, like we may have said in previous splits. I'd love to be wrong about Cloud9 because I think previously they were our best chance in All-Stars. Obviously, they went. And as a team to represent North America, I would be no happier to send, previous Cloud9s. But as they are today, I have serious hesitations.
I think one thing they mentioned in the LCS today was that earlier on, like in the first few splits, what happened was C9 would win every lane, and Meteos could just say, "All right, cool."
Mm-hmm.
And I may be misquoting this a little bit, but that Meteos could just farm his jungle and then keep winning his lanes even harder for them.
Yep.
And I think that's what's kind of happened now is that everyone's caught up a little bit. Like Dignitas had their 2 solo lanes switch up. They've been looking really, really strong. There's been a lot of changes in those lanes in the last split and a half or so, and people have caught up to Cloud9 a little bit, and I think they will be all right. I think that they will rebound from what, honestly, the only thing keeping them out of first place right now is a baffling 0-2 record to Complexity. And if that's gone, if they win both of those games, they're first place. That's it. Like it's that close of a split.
Actually, I've never thought of it that way. That is very true. And I'm still going to stick to my guns of they don't win games like they used to. That game with Dignitas, the most recent one that ended in their victory, was a bloodbath. And sure, it did eventually sway to their favor, and they were able to make some pretty big moves. But overall, I mean, that game could have gone either way.
Yeah. All right. So let's get down to your least favorite team. Why don't we? With the MVP. No.
Evil Geniuses?
Oh no, I don't think it's either of those.
I think those are the only 2 teams we have left to cover. No. Well, actually, we didn't finish Cloud9. Cloud9 next week. TSM hard game. Evil Geniuses easy game. Done. That was easy. We need a Staples button. Curse gross 6th place appropriate 8-10 record only loss of the week. Don't understand why. Loss against TSM.
They played all 4 top teams. They played all 4 top teams.
Oh my god. Wins against LMQ, Cloud9, and CLG.
And hey, are you really happy about Xpecial winning MVP?
I'm fine with that actually. Just because I don't think Curse is going to be able to pull it together.
Yeah.
He earned it.
I knew he did earn it. I think Xpecial, and somebody made a comment about this, a happy Xpecial is a winning Xpecial. And I think at this point with these wins, he's got the right attitude. Attitude being the reason, again, he was kicked out of TSM. I think he has the right attitude to win, and it's almost like he sees this maybe as just a rebuilding opportunity, like he's Curse's only hope. And to be able to support Voyboy in mid, and not support in the sense that he's supporting that role. He's obviously supporting Altec, but or not Altec, rather, whoever, Cop, rather.
Whatever other garbage AD carry decided to go bot lane with a god tier support this split.
Right. I just think that, like, overall his role in Curse is pretty good, and we probably will see Curse come out really hot next split, but this split, not going anywhere. I mean, great. They had an awesome Super Week. Fantastic. They also had that really awesome week early on, 2 splits ago, where they went really hot up against TSM, and then they decided, oh, wait a second, we're Curse, and just decided to lose a ton. Will that happen for the rest of the split? I don't know. Can they win the 13 games to start playing with the big kids, or the 3 games rather, to get up to the big kid level? And that's assuming nothing else moves forward there. I don't see that happening.
I don't know. I think it depends.
They have an easy week coming up with Complexity and EG.
What the fuck? They have Complexity and they have Evil Geniuses.
I mean, you can't really complain about scheduling when everyone gets to play everyone the same amount of times, but
this is the fucking week. This is the week where Curse either decides to be a big boy team or a shitty team. This is the week where they say, oh, wow, we took the top fucking 3 teams. We can handle the bottom 2 teams. And then get stomped by potentially Complexity, who's coming off a massive erection. Or EG, who can be okay sometimes. That's
really
gonna
sure
be
what you mean by
That's
that.
going to be the deciding factor. If they come into it and say, "Wow, we're really down right now. We need to make moves. Let's beat Complexity. Let's beat Evil Geniuses, and potentially move up the bracket." Either way, I mean, if Cloud9 is as close to first place as you say they are, Curse is still in trouble for relegations this split.
Okay, so here's the thing about Curse. This is the thing. After watching those games, I can safely say that Cop is still bad,
Yep.
but Xpecial was on it. Xpecial and Voyboy were on it. I Will Dominate was pretty good in the early game. His team fight presence was so-so, but I mean, the early game is really when he matters most. But teams are now in this awkward position with Special and somehow picking Special off and win a team fight, or you can pick Cop off and win a team fight. But when those two are together, you're not killing either one of them. It's not going to happen. If Special is too good at this point and is playing too well, or was playing too well this week, that you're not going to kill Cop. If he's on Thresh, if he's on Nami, it's just not going to happen. And Cop, even if I don't think he's the best AD carry, the way that AD carries scale in this patch means that there is inevitability. And at 6 items, with someone protecting him, Cop is going to do a shit ton of damage. And you're going to lose team fights. Because not because their synergy is so good, but that because Xpecial is so good at getting Cop a lead and so good at peeling. He is the best support at peeling in NA, which is hard to say because I'm an Afro fan.
Well, I mean, I'm happy for Xpecial that he seems to have found a pretty decent home. And as much as I hate Curse, I like Voyboy, and Saint Vicious isn't around anymore, so maybe they have a chance for me to not hate them as much. But like we said earlier, they have a pretty easy week. They have Complexity, they have Evil Geniuses. It'll be interesting to see, but probably overall not that great of a game to watch. Moving down to Complexity, sitting at 7th place, currently 6-12. They had 2 wins, EG and Dignitas, 2 losses, CLG and TSM. That's a pretty hard week for them. I think overall with CLG, TSM, and Dignitas in there. They were able to pull off that win against Dig, which is great.
That's huge.
And they pulled off a win over EG, which, is basically a game of Russian roulette there. But Complexity is interesting because they seem to beat Cloud9 100% of the time and can pull off a win against Dignitas. But I think their overall execution is just not there.
Complexity is cool because, with the proper prep, they're able to take a win away from just about any team in the league. And I love that they're, like, when you hear them in their post-game interviews and stuff, I love their philosophy and the way they think about the game. I just think they need to get a little mechanically better and start taking some more reliable advantages early game. But I don't see them being... I mean, obviously they're going to go into the relegation tournament. I don't see them being knocked out. I think they could come in pretty strong next split if they just don't get discouraged and take a positive feeling away from being able to beat teams on any given day.
And I think they do have
EG gets...
I'm sorry?
I was going to say, I think if EG gets relegated, fingers crossed, let's hope, and they get Helios, we could have a team. When EG gets relegated, if they could get Helios, if they somehow get their hands on Helios, because...
And we're gone.
Bye, Dan.
Bye again.
This is
I
great,
love
don't
how
get
it
me
only
wrong.
happens when he talks.
Right. No, that is the
Yes.
weird part. He's still talking to, poor guy. He's typing, but I'm not going to look at that, so somebody else can fill in for Dan's blank spot. I think the problem with Complexity is maybe they just don't have enough experience as a team, and they just don't have that juice yet. That is a well put together team. I mean, they get really excited about wins against Cloud9, but come on. Who hasn't pulled off a win against Cloud9? The team
They've
is
swept Cloud9.
fine, but the team isn't what they were. If they said that last split, then great. But you can't get too excited when that's your only claim to fame. When you're sitting at 7th place and you say, but we beat the best. That's not going to pay the bills. Like, I hope you can take that confidence into relegations, and I hope you can win. Because if you do move in to, the next split, then you've got a chance to be a good team. That's going to be plenty of time for you to gel together. It's going to be plenty of time for you to review your mistakes and to move on. Dan, I think you're live.
I'm live now? Yay. All right. Okay. So, yeah, I think they need a new jungler. I think they need a better shot caller, but I think as a team, they're steadily getting better. And they're very aware of their strengths and weaknesses, which is a really important thing. They know that they don't win mid-game. They know that their macro game is not the best, but they're very aware that if you give them scaling champions, they can win team fights. And they're good at winning team fights in the late game, which is how they've won pretty much all of their games. So I think if they keep moving forward with those strengths, and if they figure it out as the current team they are, then they have a chance of being in like the 5th, 4th place next split after relegation. And I think if they pull in someone more experienced and maybe better support staff for their team, then they could in theory place in the top 3, because they're really good and they're getting better and they're beating the top teams. So if they can just figure out how to stop losing to the bottom teams, I think they have a decent shot at being good next split. But this split, I think that they're obviously going to go to relegation.
Right. Well, they've got Curse next week, which will be an interesting match. And they also have LMQ, which may be a little bit of a stomp. So, I mean, they're in a position right now, just kind of doing a brief forecast for them, where they do have a lot of games against top teams coming up. Actually, all their next 2 weeks are in teams who are in contention for first place today. So their ability to peel games off those teams is going to be a major factor in just the top seeds. So is it a boon for them? Maybe not. I mean, if anything, they're only going to be doing worse. But they do have a serious impact on the games going forward. So it'll be interesting to see what they end up pulling off by the end. And then we end on a sad note. Evil Geniuses.
The best note. The happiest note ever.
Evil never prevails. That's what I take away from this. Loss against Dignitas, Complexity, TSM, and LMQ. They are the Gambit Gaming of the North American scene.
But with less to lose.
And their position matches their IQ.
I mean, if you say less to lose, but like, if they get pushed into relegation and get put into the challenger scene, like, from Evil Genius's corporate standpoint, why did you just bring a bunch of people to America, like move your team essentially to the NA scene just to have them lose a bunch? Like, I don't think Evil Geniuses is a go into relegation, lose, and then come back strong team. I think it's a go into relegation, lose, and disappear team.
And then buy another team, to be fair. They're a pretty strong organization, and they own Alliance, too.
And that's fine. You can be that as an organization, but I'm thinking for the players, it's a huge culture shift to do what they did, and this sucks for them right now because nothing they do works, and they're losing, and they're terrible, and they've been terrible for a very long time. And I think the worst thing that can happen for EG right now is for them to stay in the next split.
Yeah, I got to agree with that. The worst thing for the players. A lot of those players individually are pretty good. Thinking specifically of Helios, Altec, Crepo. They will find homes elsewhere. Mm-hmm. So I think the sooner EG kind of gets the old Yellard, probably the better for some of our favorite players on said team.
You guys got awful upset when I talked about Snoopé earlier. Snoopé still wants to play in the LCS, and I know his skill overall has declined. But if you look at, like...
Hey, tank junglers are coming back in the next patch. Fingers crossed, guys.
I don't think it's about that, though. I don't think it's about mechanical skill. I think it's about macro game. Like, jungle is all about macro game, being in the right place in the right time, and Snoopy just isn't. He's not where he needs to be. And I think the issue was never, can he do what he needs to do in a team fight? The issue was, does he have the presence in the early game that he needs to have as a jungler to snowball the lanes that can win him the game? And he doesn't. I don't think he's had that presence in a long time, not since he came to the US. And I think that's the big issue. And I don't know, him getting worse mechanically doesn't help that either.
Right.
And I think that unless he somehow develops that sense, and he might be, I mean, I know that they do have a support staff, and maybe that's something that he could work on talking. He's got enough connections.
Isn't he doing that right now for
Well,
them, for Evil Geniuses?
No.
Because he's not playing in the LCS currently.
No, I think I would guess that he lives in the EG house and he streams.
Yeah.
And that's about all he does. I know that Leviathan Law is his Twitter handle, at Leviathan Law, is the coach for Alliance. And I know that in the last couple of weeks, he has been helping EG. I don't know specifically for what weeks, but there was a tweet at one point talking about or Krepa was talking about how he had come to help them for, I think, last week's games, and I would guess Super Week as well.
My greatest hope for Snoop is Riot. I think he's got great charisma as a player. I think he has an understanding of how the game is to be played, and I think overall, when basically it's CLG EU, when they had the spotlight, he became that kind of face of that organization, and
he's become the face of the game in a lot of ways. I mean, there's a reason why EG was like
is the thing.
EG was like last place or next to last place, and Snoop is still like the central person on the posters.
Well, Krepo was on all of the stuff last year. He was on like all of the broadcasts. Why? Your team is terrible. Your performance isn't that great. Yet you're on there because you're part of this legacy.
Krepo's performance is fantastic, first of all. Second of all, he's a good analyst in his own right.
He is a good analyst, I'll give him that. I don't think his performance is noteworthy. I think he's an okay support. I don't think he's top 3 in NA. I don't think he's amazing. You look at stats alone don't prove anything. He plays
Afromu, okay. What's the other better support than Krepo?
X-Special.
X-Special.
This
Lemon Nation is better than he is. Lemon Nation is better than he is.
Are you kidding me?
He can't play Braum.
I'm officially starting the campaign. Krepo for TSM.
I think
you want to make up TSM. You want to have a reconciliation and get back together. Pick that shit up. Pick it up off the ground.
I think
Krepo for C9, Krepo for Dig, no TSM. Just say no, Krepo.
Speaking of scraping it off the ground, EG will have to scrape one off of Curse and Cloud9 to stay relevant. Insert laugh track here. That's it. That was Super Week. That was a lot that we covered in relatively not a lot of time.
All right, before we close out, because I know we're about to, I forgot to do this last time. Any listeners that love us enough to listen to the end of this show, please, we are looking for an air horn remix of our entry song to the podcast.
No.
That's not true.
Yes.
Not true at all.
Incredible Mushroom will
all.
personally get you some skins. All right? If you do this remix, you'll get a shout out on here and all that stuff.
Air horns?
Yeah.
He wants like the bad rap air horns like we talked about at the beginning of the thing, but with I assume our
only
voices
want that
and
for
music.
Super Week. God, if I could have a soundboard on this shit, that would be fantastic. Oh, you guys are screwed for next week.
If you've listened to Game of Weed, you know exactly what I'm talking
find-
about. Make that happen for us.
I'm going to get a soundboard on this guy. Oh, look at you guys. I'm going to get a soundboard on this guy, and you guys are just going to be screwed. That's why I wish we used Google Hangouts. They have soundboards for free. All right, let's end up this week on games to watch and teams to watch for next week. Let's just go around the room. We'll pick one. We'll start upper left with me. I'm going to say any game in NA with CLG. It's going to be the big movers this week on the NA side. Let's see. Mitch, what do you want for next week?
I was just about to pull up the EU. Give me a sec. Go with Greg or something.
Greg, we'll go downwards. We'll go counterclockwise.
Wait, what do you need?
Games for next week. What are you watching? What do you want? What should
I'm watching the
watch?
Fnatic games. I'm watching Cloud9. I'm watching Dig.
Give me two things. Give me what if you miss Super Week and you can look back in time and say, go watch this game, and you're on NA with me this week. What do you want to see?
The C9 Dig game.
Okay.
Because it was dead even with a really dramatic finish.
All right. And what should they watch next week? I already picked CLG, so you can't step to that.
I can't pick.
I got mine now, so I'll just jump in real quick and let you think about it for a second.
do it. Let me think about it for a second.
Looking at the matches and looking at, all right, Alliance is already pretty well up in the top. I think that Super Hot Crew, Fnatic, and Fnatic SK are two games between two teams that are in the top 3 and within a game of each other. I think those two games are really going to solidify their positions and tell us who's trying to lock up that second spot that's into the semifinals, gets that first round bye in the playoffs, and really starts to make moves in the EU LCS.
Okay.
All right, you know what? I will say it's a toss-up between LMQ Dig and C9 TSM. And I kind of want to go C9 TSM because I think it will put to bed, if Cloud9 beats them, any hope TSM has of hitting the playoffs. And we can stop this foolishness.
Well, we'll say, I mean, to be honest, we won't be able to tell that till Super Week. But we'll talk about that next week. We'll look at, after next week's games, I think each team will only have 6, so we'll kind of be able to get a better sense of what's going on. But we'll tackle that next week. Let's wrap this up with Dan. What game should you watch from last week, and what game are you going to be watching next week?
All right, game to watch from this prior week, this Super Week in EU is going to be Fnatic versus Alliance on day 3. Probably the best game in EU, one of the most exciting, a very back and forth game. And then as far as games to watch next, Fnatic's already taken. Bastard. I'm going to say watch Gambit games because they're entertaining and they last not very much time and will give you time to watch those Fnatic games.
There you go. I like that answer. Well, this has been the TForce LCS Rundown covering Super Week. We will see you on the next week. This has been Mocknorm, your host, joined this week, returning from the dead, Mitch Serial Baux.
I'm back.
Greg.
For good.
For good. Credible
Maybe.
Mushroom Russo. I had a friend in high school named Eric Russo, so I knew exactly. But I like to give it a little bit of oomph to it. Don't leave anybody flat. And Dan, however we want to pronounce it, Sephora. Dan Sephora, get your makeup here.
Oh my god. Really? Out of all the ones to pick, you just pick the one that's not only... There's just not even letters to support that pronunciation.
No, that's the best way to do it, though. We will see everybody next week.
Alrighty.